Welcome to the Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and joining me today is one of my most famous guests, possibly. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you are or not, given some of the people I've had on, but I have never had a TV star. So I would say that. So joining me today is Callie Russell, who is the runner-up of season 7, right, of the TV show Alone. Go ahead and say hi. Introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Hey, everyone. You want more of an introduction?
No, it's all good. This is always like the challenge of podcasting when you start rolling into conversations in the pre-shows, which this is a natural way to plug the pre-show. Sign up on Patreon so you can listen to the pre-show because it's probably better than the main show. But no, you get into this flow state in the conversation in the pre-show, and then all of a sudden you transition into this, okay, introduce yourself, and you kind of have to go through the same thing that you've already talked about.
Oh,
But,
yeah. Well, I'm
yeah.
happy to introduce myself. Sometimes it's like, oh, hi. And then there's some more things to say. But anyway, hey, everyone.
No.
I'm Callie Russell. I was on the Alone show. I'm your friendly local goat herder, just wandering around in the woods of Montana, drinking goat milk and enjoying life.
I will be honest, I don't like goat milk.
A lot of people say that, but they haven't tried the milk from my goats.
Okay, I'll give you that. But every other goat milk I've ever drank tasted like a barn.
Yeah, but my goats don't live in a barn, so it's not
And
possible for it to taste like a barn.
that's probably the case, actually. Do they taste like juniper and pine needles then?
A lot of milk has a lot to do with the taste, has a lot to do not only with what they're eating, but where they're living, where they're sleeping. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you're sleeping on a pile of manure and straw, you probably taste like manure and straw.
Yeah.
Not that
Something to think
not that
about
I'm
for
casting
ourselves.
not that I'm casting dispersions on the industrial food system or anything like that.
Oh, that's what the industrial food system has a lot to do with. It was a big motivation for me to be living the life that I'm living now.
like ethical treatment of animals wise, or nutritional density, or just everything.
All of it, but I was a young teenager when I started to learn about where my food was coming from and learning that it was coming from the industrialized food system. And I just, loved animals, and to learn that they were being treated so horribly. So a lot of it was animal treatment, but also the environment too, and just sort of sensible, like what makes sense to feed humanity. And for me personally, it's like I want to find a way that I can eat every day and feel really good about it, and know that the plants and animals and the land are treated with respect and honor, kindness, but also just in a way that makes sense and works with the earth's natural systems, instead of sort of fighting against it and causing more problems as a result. So the industrialized food system was what inspired me to be really connected right now and know where all my food comes from every day.
Yeah. My this sounds like a joke, actually, but this is 100% true. I didn't know you could buy frozen vegetables until I was like 11 years old.
Well, that's the amazing thing about growing up on a farm like you did, or growing up, on a ranch.
And then it's just like, I just assumed that if you ate frozen vegetables, you grew them yourself and you froze them yourself.
Of course.
And then the only thing you ever went to the grocery store is for stuff you couldn't do yourself, like flour, except sometimes we did that too. So that's obviously, and then
Right.
the first
There's
time
treats, like coffee.
yeah, things that just don't grow here. And then I went away to university and I was craving a steak. And this is where it started me down the same kind of journey from maybe the opposite perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to university and I'm craving a steak, and I go to the grocery store and I'm like, oh wow, this is expensive, but I want one. So I bought this steak and I cooked it up. It's like, this tastes like garbage. Like, what the heck? Like, this isn't a steak. This is just crap. Like, what is this? And
Totally.
then I kind of went down the same long journey, come to the same point from a different perspective. But yeah, like I went and got my most of my master's in functional medicine and human nutrition, kind of inspired in part by like the background obsession of food and like quality of food. And anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, right. Yeah, we have a connection there for sure.
like in the introduction in the email that I sent you, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you in particular is because you were somebody who was on. You have a very unique experience with the show alone, and now my understanding is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in Alone, you guys actually are alone.
That's
Like
right.
you don't have a camera crew. You're doing it all yourself, but you have like a once a week check in with
Right.
a medical team to make sure you're healthy.
Right. So that's one of the things that makes the Alone show really awesome and different from most every other, survival reality TV show out there, except for like the Les Stroud Survivor Man. That's like an older show that probably Alone was inspired by because he self filmed without a crew. But
Mhm.
most shows, most survival reality shows, there's a film crew and, they're trying to have it as authentic as possible. But when there's a film crew eating sandwiches, 5 feet from you, it's a totally different thing. So
Well, and
Alone
having a
is
conversation with them too while you're setting up the next shot and that type of stuff.
exactly, and then them being like, "Oh, wait, can you just do that again?" Get it. Anyway, Alone is really awesome because it is truly you are truly alone. There's no camera crew. We're self-shooting, and that's why I was inspired to go on the show because I was like, "Well, I get to be alone and have this really awesome wilderness solo experience," and that was inspiring to me. Not you get to do what you want every day. Of course, you whatever you do, you must film it. You have to be filming all the time. They want you to they're like, "If you're besides sleeping, like, if you're not sleeping, be filming." You're supposed to film all the time. But other than filming whatever you're doing, you get to do what you want every day. You're not on the schedule of a film crew or whatever. So anyway, we're alone out there. And then, yeah, this crew comes in. It might be once a week, but it's not on a schedule. It is really weather dependent. So it might even be 2 weeks. It really just depends on the weather and whatever else they have going on. But they come and do a med check and kind of just make sure you're not slowly dying from something that you're not telling them about. And then they also swap out batteries and memory cards and that kind of stuff. And then they leave and they try not to talk to us too much and try to just, you know, let us stay in our little bubble of
I'd
aloneness.
hate to
So
be the editor on that show. Like I can't even imagine how many thousands of hours of footage that's just like you sitting there whittling sort of things.
oh, it's tons. Yeah, but there is somebody that's supposed to watch everything and they, categorize it and do all this stuff so it's an interesting experience out there because I'm filming myself all the time, mostly. And I know, I'm capturing thousands of hours of footage and 1% of what I'm filming is actually going to make the show. So it's this sort of interesting thing where you end up getting really comfortable with the camera and there's no sort of like performance or like I'm going to do this or I'm going to try to come off this way because you just realize there's only a tiny bit that's actually going to get shown and so then you start to get really comfortable with like, yeah, most of this no one's going to see anyway.
I might
And
as
then
well be
that's what
crazy.
gets yeah, and that's what gets put on the show too, because it's most interesting because it's authentic, and that's another reason the show's so cool is because, you're flipping through TV and, there's not a lot of authentic, real things out there. But this show it captures like real authentic human experience and emotions and stuff so it's really fascinating. Of course it's edited, so
Mhm.
stuff is done in the editing process, but the authenticity is there and I think that that's a really beautiful and special thing to be sharing with the world in that way.
Yeah, like we talked a little bit in the pre-show. Like I've always kind of wondered what that experience would be like, and I remember watching the very first episode of the first season, and I just remember there's this one guy that was just super talking big about, oh yeah, I'm Mr. Outdoorsman of all outdoorsmen type of guy, right? And he got dropped off and he was on the island for 3 hours before he tapped out. And he was just completely panicked because the noise is in the bush. And he's like, yeah, if I had my gun, I'd be fine. But like, I'm curious if I was in that situation, would I be the guy that tapped out in 3 hours or would I be the guy that's like stabbing a muskox to death? Probably not. But
Yeah. It's funny that guy I think that he's the most famous from the whole show. If when people he's the I feel like the person I hear the most about. I haven't watched I haven't watched a lot of the early seasons, but I hear about him. Yeah, the guy that was scared of bears and tapped in 3 hours and all that. I feel like he's made the biggest impact on people.
Well, it's like what did you expect? I mean, come on. Anyway, it's fun. But you like remembering through the show, you were like pretty mentally on from the show's perspective. You said it's obviously edited and stuff, but you seemed like you were like really mentally on point the whole time. And what really took you out at the end was just the medical end of it. You just lost so much weight that they essentially forced you out.
Yeah, and it was actually spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched season 7 of
Well,
Alone.
screw those people if they
Yeah.
haven't.
Pause this if you don't want it to be spoiled, but it was frostbite actually is the reason that they pulled me out, was I had
Oh, that's
frostbite
right.
on my toes that was spreading. I also was pretty skinny too. I did lose a lot of weight, and I didn't have a lot of weight to lose going out anyway, and I thought that that was gonna be kind of my, like, kryptonite, was just that I didn't have a lot of weight to lose, so I knew that I need to just be eating out there as best as I could. So, yeah, for me, it was what took me out was reaching my physical edge, basically, but I discovered out there that my sort of spiritual, emotional, mental edge I was very far away from it. I don't know where it was, but I did not hit it. And that was why it was so hard to leave, because my heart and soul were still so in that experience. I wanted to stay out there because it was it was so special, and I was getting to know myself on such a deep level and be so connected to the land, and it was a really amazing experience. And so it was hard to leave before I felt, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm done. I was really I realized, hey, my body, like I'm reaching my physical edge, but my spiritual, emotional, mental edge just feels so expansive, and I'm so far from being done with this. And so that's hard, I think, as a as a person, to reach your physical edge when you have so much more in your like heart, I guess. And I guess some of us get to that, and maybe at the end of life, or who knows when it happens for any of us. But it's a really interesting experience to realize our bodies can only handle so much.
Yeah, and that really came across on screen because, like, I mean, my wife's a pretty tender-hearted person at the best of times, but it came across and when you got medicaled out there, she's just like burst into tears. Oh no! And it was like
Aw.
this like tragedy for her. I'm like, you realize that this isn't you, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's you can
going
connect
back
with
to
other
the
people.
authenticity, it really does come across, and I would imagine that you had a was there any point during that time because you were alone for 89 days if I remember right,
Yep,
correct?
that's right, 89.
Minus the couple hours of medical stuff spread out through there. And then
Mhm.
you were on kind of the northeast arm of the Great Slave Lake in the Northwest Territories, correct?
Yes, and I can tell you the aspect of my camp was north facing. That's where that's where they dropped me, was in this north facing bowl, and I thought that they were joking. I was like, "There's no way you're gonna drop me here." And they're like, "Yes."
So you have like north winds coming down in on you the whole time and like
Oh, yeah. Yep, in the late season, the sun never touched where I was camped, and, yeah, it was really hard because also a normal survival situation, if I was just dropped out there and actual surviving, so, I'm like, "Hey, I'm surviving," I would pick a different spot. I would camp somewhere better, but I
yeah.
had to because of the rules of the show. They're like, "No, you have to camp in this spot that's close enough to the Great Slave Lake so we can, get in and out to your camp easily and stuff." So I had to camp in this north facing bowl, and it's a location I would have never chose because, yeah, lack of sun, horrible winds. So it's a really a rough spot.
It doesn't actually ever say when you got dropped off. Like what's the season that you actually were there? You went into the obviously snow, but I mean in the Northwest Territories that could be August for all we know.
Yeah, they drop us in late September. Yeah, so I was out there from, basically fall equinox to the winter solstice. Yeah.
Okay, so you were there until Christmas, which is
Yeah.
basically, which
Yep,
is like
exactly.
that's I mean, that's not the worst part of winter in the Northwest Territories,
Right,
but
it
it's
gets
getting bloody
it's
close.
worse.
But yeah, so when I worked in the oil field,
Mhm.
I was up in the north, kind of crossing just into the territories, and I had this pair of winter boots in the back of my truck, and I don't even know how cold it actually was because the little temperature gauge on my truck, it was like I remember looking at it and it was like -56, and then the next time I looked at it, it just said low. So
Yeah.
I don't
Everything
even know what the
nothing works when it's that cold.
yeah, so it's like I have no idea what the temperature is,
Yeah.
but it was bloody cold. And anyway, when
Yeah.
I get to the site that I was going to, I got out of my truck and I pulled my boots out of the back of my truck at this lockbox and pulled them out, put them on, and as I'm walking across the site, the rubber toe on this boot just like snapped off because it was so cold.
Yeah, yeah, it's a whole different world when it's that cold, and I know, the winter was only gonna get worse from the time I left the field, but it was still -40 plus wind chill out there, and it was so I mean, everything like, just going to the bathroom was like a life or death situation, you know? Like, you're gonna get, like, frostbite instantly, and the cameras, nothing wanted to work. It became just I mean, I almost felt impossible to get the cameras, working and the batteries, nothing I had to keep the batteries in my, like, inner layer in my jacket and, like, rub them and, like, try to put them by the fire and to get these batteries to work, and it was just, yeah, and the screen was always covered with ice and trying to, like, scrape this ice off of the screen of the camera. I'd walk down to the lake and bust a hole in the ice with an axe and to get some I was like, "I want today I'm gonna treat myself to some liquid water, instead of melting ice down. I'm gonna go get that nice liquid water." I'd get it, but by the time I brought it back up to my shelter, it was already ice, like, already froze, so there's really no point.
Uh, And yet you had to chop through a foot and a half of ice in order to get to your water.
Exactly. Yeah, but it really wasn't much of a point to get it because it would just be ice by the time I got back to my shelter anyway. So I had all these ice cubes around my shelter and I would just grab an ice cube in the morning and throw it in my pot to melt it down for water.
That's yeah. I'd be curious. Like it seems like all of the alone shows are just basically a starvation. Who can starve the longest? At least that's how they kind of edit it out to be. But I'd be curious to how long people like yourself who just have that mental resilience of like, oh, I can keep going here, but my body says no. It's like if you were dropped off in the same place in May when things are starting to really pop instead of heading into the long dark death of the world. I wonder how much different your experience and how much longer you could potentially stay there because it's not the aloneness that took you out. It was just like the realities of the environment.
Totally. Yeah, and then the show is, some of the seasons are sort of a starve fest, and it is unfortunate because, it would be really cool to see more of just how abundant land can be in the right season and the right time with the right resources and all that kind of thing. But yeah, a lot of it is just starving slowly. Yeah, I mean, in a more, a less extreme environment with more food resources or more time basically to gather the food resources because there were a decent amount of food resources in that area. It's just, you have a lot of other things you're trying to do it all by yourself. Yeah, I think I would probably be having fun for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's the show that I would watch. Actually, it's like I've often thought that would be really cool to have like a take a modern person and dump them in 1850 on the plains or in the wilderness or something and say here's your axe, here's your stuff, build your homestead, and we'll see you in a year.
Yeah. That'd be
Like
awesome.
give them the 1850s resources. Like there's a part of me that would just like I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Me and my family, we just have our little homestead out in the wilderness, disappear from the world for a year. That would be so fun.
Yeah. I think that would be fun, and also, it's ringing a bell. I feel like PBS might have done this. I recall maybe seeing something like this when I was a teenager. on PBS, like the public broadcasting station.
Yeah,
And it was that they just had a modern family and then they dropped them. They're like, here's your AIDS clothing and your axe and go build a cabin and live. I don't know how long they did it for, but it was really interesting. Like I said, it's kind of a vague memory from when I was a
I'll have to
teenager.
look that up. I know I
Yeah.
saw a show set it was in, I think it was in Manitoba in Canada, where there was a couple, three, I think there was three couples that did something similar, but they weren't like they talked to their neighbors and they bartered with their neighbors who had tractors and sawmills.
Right.
I mean, they did
Right.
all of they weren't allowed to use those, but they had access to them, which isn't the same.
Right. Yeah. And that is another interesting thing because being alone as a human, I mean, I love and value my alone time so much. I really enjoy it. It feels very nourishing for me to have alone time. However, doing an experience where you are living on the land and in certain places you can be successful and take care of yourself, indefinitely, especially, maybe the tropics, for example, by yourself. But in places, especially in more extreme places, it's so clear that humans, we're not a, solitary species. We are a group, tribal clan. We need each other. And it only makes sense to be living life with interdependent on other people and taking care of each other and especially raising children. Just we're kind of like a group species and it's so clear with an experience like that. And not only for people that just from a mental health perspective, people missing their families and stuff, which is totally natural and normal, but just from like being able to do it all, it's sort of silly trying to do it all by yourself. Yeah, it's possible. You can do it. And in certain environments, it's not too hard, but I don't know. To me, it's just really clear that we're a
Yeah.
group species and we need each other, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when you have to build the house and grow the food, it's difficult to do that by yourself. Like you said, if you're in the tropics where your shelter can literally just be an umbrella and a t-shirt and you're good, it's a whole you only have to focus on one thing really.
Yeah, and when you have, if you have 2 months to get ready for, the rest of the year, 2 months to grow food, put it up, hunt dry meat, get fire, put up firewood and find all your dry tinders and just like get everything ready in a small period of time to be prepared for the rest of the year. It's a lot of work to do by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so I remember in the show, you probably don't remember everything you said, but I remember at a certain point you were kind of talking about predator and prey type of things, and that I think is actually what kind of set my mind into motion about what I talked to you about. I don't remember now. It was a few months ago, but when you were alone, do you ever get into that like mindset of like you have to be conscious of being prey or predator? I mean, you you had to murder a few bunnies while you were there. Did you ever feel the opposite fear while you were out there by yourself?
Well, for me and for most humans in a really wild place, here both we and I at that am a predator. I am both predator and prey. And you're very aware of that, when you're in a place with, big bears and wolves. And I also was on Alone. I got to go back a second time for this Alone Frozen thing. And we were in an area where there was polar bears. So you become very aware that you are, and we don't have guns. We have, simple stick bows and axes. And you become very aware that you are not an apex predator. You're not the biggest, not the baddest out there. And also, the whole time I'm out there, I'm hunting. I was never not hunting. I almost always carried my bow unless I was carrying something else like firewood, and I couldn't actually have it in my hand. But when I went on walks for most anything, I would always have my bow with me. Even if I wasn't planning to be hunting, I was always, being prepared to switch into like bee hunting, all the time. So it's like this very interesting thing of being a human that's alone in a place with big predators without a gun to feel that I'm at once, I am a predator, I'm hunting, I'm actively hunting all the time. And also there could be a a bear or wolves actively hunting me. And it's an interesting thing. For me, I had already spent so much time in the wilderness, like, going on alone did get out of my comfort zone in many ways. It's definitely the coldest environment I'd ever been in and, stuff like that, but I had already spent lots of time in the wilderness, and so I was very comfortable, very at home in wild places, very at home with predators, and I had already faced my fear. I've already faced all those fears. So when I was on the show, it wasn't this active like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared of everything," because I already knew my place in the environment. I'd been, so many times I'd been sleeping out, no tent, no shelter, no gun, and had a bear come and sniff my face, been like woken up to bears in my face. I've had mountain lions, like I've woken up to seeing mountain lions, walking close enough to me to where I could have popped my foot out and touched them. I've been close to predators lots of times, and I'd already faced those fears and had a comfortable comfortability with them and also my place. And that's something that I think about a lot of the time as far as my ability to enjoy life is also knowing no matter what I do, no matter how hard I strive or what I'm striving for, I'm going to die. Everybody I love is going to die, and that's okay. That's actually a natural part of life, and it's nothing to actually be so afraid of. It's gonna happen regardless, and that's helped me feel a lot more at peace around predators. Even though I'm a predator, there's still predators, and I could get eaten. That's
Yeah.
just part of it.
That kind of makes me think of a couple experiences that I had as a kid. The polar bears, I've never been around polar bears, but I think that would legit scare me.
Yeah, they're legit hunting people.
Yeah. Grizzlies are kind of, they don't really hunt people, but they are very aggressive and dangerous. And we have a lot of grizzlies around here. I have game cameras up at the north end of my property here, and we see a mother with her cubs every once in a while. And so that's one of those like, yeah, kids don't go wander up there by yourselves right now. But as a kid, I remember walking out of the back door of our house one time, and it's like early morning, and I'm standing there, and out from under the edge of the porch walks this black bear, and like I'm like he's literally at my feet, right? And he looks up at me, and I look down at him, and it's just kind of like in my head, I'm like, what do I do now? And so I just like, get out of here! What are you doing? And he kind of jumped and took off running, and then another time wasn't too long, like it might have been that summer again. I was riding my bike down the road, and this cow moose runs across the road,
Oh, yeah,
and behind her
moose.
comes her calf, and the calf jumps across the fence, but he didn't clear the fence, and he tangled his feet, and a black bear comes ripping out, grabs him, and drags him off into the trees. And the entire experience takes 10 times longer than the experience itself to tell. And it gave me this respect of like, holy cow, that little black bear who's probably smaller than me just carried off that moose calf who's probably bigger than me and faster than I could sprint.
Yeah, faster than you can even figure out what the heck's happening.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, it gave me a new respect for like for that thing. But so kind of to bring it back to what I wanted to really talk to you about, those is like that when you're getting into that predator versus prey mindset. It's like you watch a nature documentary, and you see the lion or the cougar or whatever carefully sneaking up on the animal that's drinking, right? And it seems like it's very intentional with its actions. Whereas the prey animal is basically just reacting. And I think it makes sense because you can't afford to assess every single time whether this scary movement is going to be a threat or just a squirrel running by when you're a prey animal and your life's at stake. Whereas as a predator, not a whole lot of things are attacking lions, not a whole lot of things are attacking cougars or bears. And so they can afford to be relaxed and yeah, and intentional about their movements. They don't have to react in the same way. And so they end up having more choice for themselves versus a prey animal. What do you feel about that? Like in based on your experience of that, recognizing that you were a prey but also a predator.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, I spend every day of my life for more than a decade with a herd of prey animals. too, with I'm a goat herder. That's one of the things I do. And so I get to observe prey behavior every single day, how they're reacting to, sounds and movement and all kinds of things. And it is very, well, predators and prey, just anybody living in a wild environment, you're paying attention to everything all of the time because that's just your senses are on and keyed in, and that's just part of being alive is you're going to be paying attention to everything, and that's for good reason to keep you alive. But the goats and other prey animals, I watch deer every single day. I usually observe deer and other prey animals too, and it's easy for fear to be taken by fear when maybe it's a false alarm. There's lots of false alarms where it's like they all do it's like a drill, There's like alarm call, run, group around me, get ready, like so stare in the direction. And it's like, some days it's a coyote, but some days it's a grouse. And that fear it's like, you can be overtaken by it very easily. However, as a predator, so to me, I witness it in the animals, but also in myself. It's a nervous system response. Our nervous systems are constantly responding to things, but it all has to come. You're like, okay, you're just reacting. You can just be reacting to things all the time. Yes. But it also comes down to training. Like, for example, like you've probably hunted. Some people on the show are hunters. Just because you're a predator and you're like, yeah, I'm the biggest, baddest thing in the woods. Like I'm hunting, I'm being very intentional. Like I'm creeping. I know exactly what I'm doing. I have like a perfect purpose. I know what I'm doing. You're pulling back your bow and a big bull elk is running at you, you can start shaking and it's like you're nervous. You're like, whoa, no, focus, like keep your cool, keep your cool. Like you're a hunter. You are hunting. You are not, you are hunting right now. But the nervous system is like, oh my gosh, like we could die right now. This is scary. And you start shaking and you can't take a shot if your body's shaking and it's like you're reacting. It's just your nervous system is reacting to a scary situation. So how do you manage that? It's with training. It's exposing yourself to those situations and training yourself to breathe, to calm your nervous system down in those moments. And so it's like we all can train ourselves, and it's just like, running or something. You go running, you're like, "Oh, I haven't been running in 5 years," and I'm running, and after a minute of running, I feel like I can't breathe and I'm gonna, like, die because I can't breathe. They're like, "Oh, that's just how my body is. I guess I just can't run. I will die because it's hard to breathe after running for a minute." But it's like, "Well, yeah, I haven't run in 5 years. Of course that's gonna be happening. That's what my body's used to. If I'm used to reacting to every scary situation and freaking out and letting my nervous system, like, shake and get really worried and feel lots of stress and anxiety, that's like the pathway that's been created, so it's gonna be happening really easily. But if I train myself, be like, "Okay, this is scary. What do we do? Take a breath, like, take a deep breath, calm yourself down. It's okay," And you train, and so I feel like our nervous systems, our minds, like, yes, they're there and they keep us safe and they serve a really important function and they shouldn't be like, shut down or belittled. They are serving us, but it's like we can train ourselves. We can train our minds. We can train our nervous systems just like we train, to be able to be better runners or whatever it is.
Yeah. Um, when when you you talked about how you need to be alert whether you're a prey or predator, it actually and kind of in conjunction with this training, it made me remember an experience that I had. I had this kid with me, teenager. We were going somewhere, and he was going to help me with something. And we're driving down this back road, and he grew up in a town, different experience than myself, but driving along, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a coyote. And so I point, oh, there, look, there's a coyote. And then we keep driving, and I saw a jackrabbit. There's a jackrabbit. There's a coyote, and there's a fox. And after the fifth or sixth time of me pointing out something, he's like, "How do you do that? Like, do what?" It's like I wouldn't have seen any of those had you not pointed them out. And I never I've never realized why, but I think you're right. It's just like that. You train your body to be situationally aware. And when you're comfortable in that situation, when the bull elk is, if you're trained for the bull elk charging for you, that's where you step into back into the, like the predator prey. When you're in the predator way of, okay, I have trained, I have learned techniques to calm myself down. I've learned these things. I'm intentional with my actions. You've learned things, you've developed skills, you've developed, and all of these things kind of develop confidence in yourself and your ability, and then you begin to apply it naturally going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you get to that point where you don't have to think about it because you've created those, like, yeah, neural pathways or whatever. You just, like, created that pattern in your system. You're like, "This is how we react when we are facing something scary, instead of just reacting and freaking out, we take a deep breath and, keep our calm." And so it can become this sort of second nature because we do, and then that's your reactive. Like, how you react is with calmness, is with
You,
you're still aware, you don't lose your cool because that's what you've done so many times. And not to say not to say when you're trying to pull back your bow and a bull elk's coming, and you still sometimes you do lose your cool, you get nervous, and it's okay. That's like part of being a human being with a brain and a nervous system. Even with really good training, we get nervous sometimes, and that's like, all right, it's just gonna happen. But one thing that I think is really important on this, like, topic with predator prey and our nervous systems and stuff is this is something I've observed also with the goats. So, when we have like a scary situation happen, our nervous system, like, we get flooded with all this stuff and adrenaline and all these things. And then if you don't do anything with it, then that stuff gets like sits in your body and is repressed naturally. We don't, like, as humans, we repress that. We're like, "Oh my gosh, that was scary. I feel nervous. I feel all this stuff. I can't feel it. I'm gonna just shove it down." It is not designed to be shoved down. Like the goats, just the other day, we're out in the woods, we're out foraging every single day like we do. And we see coyotes run by. The goats get really scared. They know what a coyote is. And we hear them howling. They're like yipping and howling, and they're really close to us. The goats are scared, and so as a human, sometimes we're scared. You feel like the nervousness, the shakes. We want to repress it and not feel that. But the goats and prey animals, it's natural. Like after you go through like a fight or flight situation, you're in fight or flight. Whether you got to act out, like run, you have to run, you're that's your body being able to act it out, and you're like, "Cool, we used that adrenaline, we ran for our lives, we're good now." But if you end up not needing to run or to fight, all that adrenaline and everything's in your body, and it doesn't have anywhere to go. And so what the goats do, I've seen deer do this too, I think all wild animals must do it, is after that fight or flight situation, you get to a safe place and you let your body actually feel that stuff and it shakes. Like the goats will shake, deer will shake, and humans, I think, are supposed to do that too, where you have to like shake it, let yourself shake it out and not repress it. And I think that that's something that maybe we've like messed up on a little bit as people, is like trying to control all of that so much. And so it might even sound like paradoxical to what I'm saying for like, well, yeah, you just train yourself. But like part of that training is to like let yourself feel it too. Like when it's time, like let yourself feel it when it's time. And you have to give your body permission to feel it, to shake it out. And then that
Mhm.
makes you even more resilient to being able to handle those situations because you're not just like repressing all this stuff on top of itself. So anyway, I think that that's a pretty big theme in like somatic therapy. But
Yeah,
to me, it makes sense because I witness it in the wild all the time.
that's what I was going to say. It's like it tracks along, like working as a therapist with people. One of the things that I talk to them about is like your brain is constantly dumping input into your consciousness, right? And not even like it's like processing so much information that's just dumping on you. Yeah, that you couldn't possibly be aware of everything. And in fact, like autism, for example, is a condition of you being aware of too much of your sensory input, essentially, and not being able to process it. And so we have all these heuristics and stuff that just that help us deal with it. But just because a reaction comes into our head of, fight, flight, response, whatever, doesn't define who we are. It's our actions that we take after that. And if we, and like you're right, if we just like repress that you know, go get our alcohol to help us deal with our stress instead of processing it and letting it move through our bodies and on its way out. Yeah, that's not healthy. And I think that's where you see with the prey animals, like you said, is like, yeah, they key up, ready to react. Okay, and they either do the action or they go, okay, shake it out, and I'm back to eating.
Exactly.
Whereas a person, like my boss yelled at me at work, and now I'm tied up and I need to bottle it up, and I get home and then I yell at my wife and kids, and then I'm a bad father, and so then I go drinking, and then the next day the same thing happens, and you just keep repressing that same, and it just builds up and becomes problematic.
Totally.
Hmm,
Yeah, and then that's the pattern too. Yeah.
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 So one of the other things that you do on your website there, you talk about teaching primitive skills and things like that. Do you do like courses? Do you do one-on-one type stuff? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff. Lately, I mean, I have done one-on-one stuff. I've done, like, one-on-one, like, private workshops. Lately, I've been doing group things, and in the summertime, mostly up here in Montana, I do, the different week-long skills sort of immersions, and I've been focusing on all women's stuff, which is really fun. Have these groups of women come out and we work on like all kinds of basic wilderness skills and it's really fun and we focus on the hard skills. How do we make a fire? How do we make a shelter? How do we how do we keep ourselves safe and warm and alive in different situations? But it's also really about the ancestral skills, the connection, like our relationship to the elements, to the fire and to the food and to ourselves and to each other. And there's like a lot of really beautiful like bonding that happens. And yeah, it's really amazing. And so, yeah, that's been the focus is these women's skills groups, but I also do stuff co-ed, men and women. I do stuff with kids. I do these experiences where I take people out on goat packing adventures. So we pack up my goats, are trained to carry things, backpacks. They have they're like little mini mules. And we pack them up and go into the mountains and have these, experiences out there. And we get to practice skills, but it's the hard skills, but it's the skills of remembering what it means to be human and, yeah, have a healthy nervous system and laugh and eat food around the fire with other people and tell stories and all this stuff that kind of defines us as a species and feels really good to our bodies, our souls, our nervous system. It's, uh it's really fun.
But how
I
can you
love
doom
doing it.
scroll if you're sitting around the fire with a bunch of people telling stories? I mean, come on.
Well, that's why we're so drawn to our phones. It's like our fire these days. We're naturally drawn to, like, sit around a fire and tell stories at night, and the phone is the modern day version of that. It's a light, it's a little firelight in there, and it's other people with their stories, and so we just gotta remember, like, that where it came from and to gather around the real fire with the real people and have the real stories.
That that might be the single most profound thing that has ever been said on this podcast, and we're in like 100 and something episodes at this point. That's like that is legit profound wisdom right there. This is the little flickering firelight that tells stories.
Yeah, and that's why we're drawn to it. It's our, ancestral memory, thousands and thousands of years sitting around the fire, sharing stories with each other, but now we're kind of all in our own little isolated, you know, jail cells with our little phone firelights, but I think for at least for me, I know my soul was calling me home to the actual fire, the hearth fire with other people, and so that's why I like doing these workshops and, like, providing that anyone can go out, grab your family, go start a fire, tell some stories and all that good stuff, but I love, providing the space, make it easy for people to come and have those experiences and meet new people that are interested in having them together, so it's really a joy and honor to help us all remember who we are really as humans.
So from a like a skills perspective and a competency perspective, again going back to kind of like that intentionality thing and a little bit of what we talked about in the pre-show there about my theory of mental health. What do you feel like what do you see people when they come to you from like a I don't even know how I can make a fire. If I was in a plane crash out in the wilderness, I would just die because I don't know how to do anything and work through that relatively simple skill set to go, I can't believe I can now create fire. Like that's one of the most. Did you ever watch what's that Tom Hanks movie, Castaway?
Yes, I
Like,
did.
one of the most impactful scenes in that whole thing in my mind, the one that everybody remembers is like, "I've made fire," you know?
Yeah. It's like it's part of what makes us human is being able to make fire, and so, yeah, the hard skills, they can be really challenging and hard to learn, but I find that it's the it's like the mental stuff that's so impactful as well. So for like example, on the Alone Show, you can be so skilled. You can be the best, baddest skilled, best hunter, best shelter builder, best fire maker, best survivalist. You can have all those skills, but if you don't have like the mindset piece, you're not going to do so well. Or maybe you'll like physically be doing well, but you'll still be suffering. And so I think that that's a huge thing that I love to see brighten, like spark in people is coming and saying, I can't do this. I don't, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's too, all these things, but then seeing people do it. Like that's one of my favorite things is seeing that empowered shift in people from going to like, I don't know how to do this. Like I'm intimidated, but I'm like doing that negative self-talk about myself and like, oh, someone else is going to do it better and blah, 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 all that like mental BS that gets in our own ways and like moving through that to be able to create, yeah, fire and be able to tend this beautiful element that all of our ancestors, knew had a relationship with, knew had a tendency that spark and then, totally come alive and then be like, wow, what else can I do? I can make fire. What else? Anything, so much. And yeah, it's like you get to come back alive and know how amazing you are and all, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. What was the question?
No, that was the answer, so that's obviously answered the question.
Well, good.
It was just like that movement of people, like, seeing the empowerment of people when they learn a skill like fire.
Oh, it's the best.
It just moves, and I think that's why my wife says I have ADHD, which is probably true. But it's one of those things that's why I feel driven to do the things that I do and learn the things that I learn and that type of stuff. Like I am probably one of the very few people that you will ever meet in your life who, like, I can call myself a doctor. I have multiple degrees. I also have a class 1 driver's license. I can build a house. So I have my commercial driver's license. I can literally drive anything on the road. I can build a house, although sometimes not very well. I make mistakes.
Hey, but if it keeps the snow out, you're good.
Yeah, I'm not very good at like mechanic work, but I can do basic maintenance on my vehicle. My current learning obsession is I'm learning Arduinos, so like microcontrollers, little computer control stuff, kind of out of a need for something related to my solar system, but it's like I get into these, like, I just want to learn because I feel like the more skills I have, the more ability that I have to do things for myself. I don't necessarily have to do them all for myself, but the comfort I have in myself of being able to, like, if something breaks, I can figure it out. Moves me from this state of like uh constant reactivity and fear of like, oh no, what's going to happen to a state of, worst case scenario, and the whole world goes to hell. I can just walk back out there into my backyard and I can feed my family.
Yeah, it does. It feels good to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the world, like, to your like teaching them how to light a fire. So many people don't know how to do that, and so you get this snowpocalypse nonsense that's going on the East Coast, and like there's legit people gonna die because their heat goes out and they don't know what to do, and they could have burnt their table or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and just having, like, systems in place. We could just build houses in a really smart way to where if people didn't have heat, their houses would still stay at a survivable temperature. We could do that as a society. We could, make sure all the elderly were in homes that are, like, passive solar homes or whatever, that if the electricity goes out, it's okay, like, they'll survive. But, yeah, we don't have those systems in place, but there's a lot of things we could do as, like, a whole culture, but since, if that's not happening, it certainly does feel nice to take that into your own hands and feel the security of being like, "Yeah, I have some basic skills, like, if something happened, I could, start a fire, like, I could, feed my family," or even just having yeah, growing food or whatever it is to just feel those little bits of, like, to be able to feel secure in that. It's a nice feeling, I think, for most people to have that. Be like, "Yeah, we don't know. There's a lot out of our control, but there's a few things that we can," and to feel that sense of, like, empowerment is a really amazing thing, and for a lot of human history, most people were really capable and did have, some basic living skills in that way, and so it's nice to kinda reconnect with those.
Yeah, I think we've lost a lot of that ancestral knowledge that,
Mhm.
and as we lose more of it, the people become more fearful and more
Yeah.
worried about their surroundings because they feel more out of control and they feel, more at the mercy of everything else. And I think you see
Yeah,
that in the reactivity of everybody in the world now, like
yeah,
see a scary thing on Instagram and suddenly it's the world's
yeah.
coming to an end.
Yeah, it's really easy, just like when the goats see a grouse or whatever, it's really easy to get lost in the fear and, it's really easy to get swooped up in it, not just like, "Oh, it's a moment of fear. Okay, it's all right. Redirect. We're good. We're cool." It's, yeah, really easy to get swept up in it these days. Really, really easy to get swept up in the fear of everything.
Well, we should probably wrap it up here, and so you can go back and take care of your goats some more
Sure.
before they see something scary.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting a nice little snowstorm right now. It's beautiful.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, I wanna do can I do a quick little plug for something?
Oh, absolutely. That's actually what I was.
Sure.
My next question was going to be: is there anything that you want to plug? Go ahead.
Okay. So this might be, the surprise or whatever. It was a surprise to me. So since the Alone Show, for some reason, I get invited, to corporate events to be a public speaker. Yeah, like, do, like, inspirational speaking, if you will, and it really surprised me, before Alone, when I was just a vagabond living under a tree with goats, I never thought that I'd be invited to, the national bar conference for all the best lawyers, in the country, and they would give me a microphone and let me get up on the stage and say stuff and people wanna listen. Never thought that would happen, but it does, and it's really fun, and I have a sister who is younger than me, her name's Ravanna, she's special needs, so she's extra fun and has, like, different needs, but she really loves going on these with me, so anytime I do a public speaking gig, I'll bring her with me. And, we've gone to a few places, Utah, North Dakota, a few anyway, some places, but it's her dream to go to New York City. She wants to go to New York, and I thought, "Hey, if I ever got a public speaking thing in New York, then that would just be, it'd be a fun little gig for me. She get to go to New York." So, anybody out there who has doing some sort of event in New York that wants a public speaker and Ravanna to come along, she's extra fun. That's my thing I'm putting out there into the universe.
Well, I know for a fact that there are quite a few people who listen to this podcast in New York, and I know a couple of them. I know a couple of them are associated with something called the Maker Camp. I don't know if you've
Oh,
ever heard of
cool.
that before.
No, it sounds cool though.
It is pretty cool. I want to go, but I've never made it because it's on the other side of the freaking country. But yeah, it's basically like a big get together and learn a whole bunch of different blacksmithing and sewing and jewelry making and woodworking, the whole nine yards. And it's like every beginning of October every year now. But yeah, so
Cool.
um, those of you know who you are, you guys make it happen for Callie.
Yeah, and for
But
Ravanna, because and anyone who watched the show, the Cajun Sparkle bit, that's her. She just like the summer I was getting ready for the show for oh my gosh, you would just say Cajun Sparkle and she would just be crack up laughing. So
that's
anyway,
fun.
that's her Cajun Sparkle, Miss
That's
Ravanna.
fun. Well, yeah. Why don't you give everybody your social media as well, so they can look you up and all that jazz, or the best way to contact you.
Yes, yeah, so I'm on Instagram and YouTube and I have a website, amazing, and it's all Capricorn, which is a really easy word to know and spell because everyone, it's just a normal word. I know
Yeah,
it's actually a
use it all
really
the time.
it's horrible marketing because I just made this word up, but Capricorn, it's like the goat queen, but it's Capra, like a goat, Capra, con, KHAN.com. And that's like Capricorn on Instagram and stuff. But if you look up Callie Russell, that's probably easier to spell. And I think it all comes up under Callie Russell too.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the very interesting conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
I sure did. And thanks for the invite, Andrew. And thanks for what you do too. I mean, I think most of us struggle with mental health stuff these days, like just trying to, figure it out. And so to have like support and community around that, I think is a really amazing thing. So thanks for the work you do and all the ways you're helping people.
Well, and that's the goal of the podcast too, is, like I initially started it as kind of like a niche marketing more than anything else, but it really has like, it's really become a community of like the support is significant. I was surprised by it, and it's a conversation that needs to be had on a broader scale than just like, oh, I feel bad about myself, I need to go see a therapist. And I think what you're doing and what you're teaching, like those basic skills and stuff, is bringing it kind of full circle into, important things, is like community and, basic
Nature.
comfortableness with yourself
Yeah.
and nature and those things.
Making things
And
with your hands.
exactly. Yeah. Thank you for coming on again. I'm going to pause the show here for a second for the recording. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for supporting. If you have any questions, reach out to questions@workshoптherapypodcast.com. And if you want to appear on the show or you have a good story to tell, please shoot me an email on that same message. And we'd like to thank all of the Patreon supporters who do support the show. You do make it happen. And with that, we'll pause and we'll head over to the after show for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Every episode of this podcast exists because a few folks decided it was worth supporting, not with just their ears and their attention, but with their actual hard-earned cash. And that's very humbling. And I want to take a moment to thank the founding fathers of the Workshop Therapy podcast, the first 5 who got this show on the road and who earned their permanent thank you. Mr. Matthew from Argiano Serio, Brad of Brad's Customs, Keith of Blackthorn Concepts, Eric of Overall Makerworks, Brandon of Tectonic Creations. I'd really like to thank you. Your support really does mean more than you realize. You've helped keep the lights on, the mics running, and the message moving. I'm also especially honored to welcome the newest member of the podcast family, Mr. Dave Desjardins of What Dave's Doing. Probably messed up your name because I'm not very good at those French last names, Dave, but thank you for stepping in and saying, yeah, this is worth it. It's really easy to scroll past a lot of these, come support me on Patreon ads these days, and choosing to actually stop and invest in something, especially something that I'm a part of. It really is a big deal. It really says something about the importance of community, creativity, and mental health. So if you're listening and this show has helped you feel seen or sparked a thought or helped you feel a little less alone or given you a little bit of boost to do something a little bit better, please consider supporting on Patreon. If that's not in the cards right now, then that's okay. You can support the show by sharing it, sending it to a friend, post a clip, tell someone something about it that hit a chord for you. And that's how we grow, and that's how this work reaches people who really need it. So as always, if you've got a question or a story you want to share, send it to questions@workshoptherapy.com. I read them all, and that's not very hard because you guys don't send in very many. So I'd appreciate more. I mean, you can even jump onto ChatGPT and ask it to ask me a question, then we'll see. But anyway, read them all. Thanks for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And let's get on with the show.